Hi, this is James Maroney of First Choice College, and today I'm going to walk you through how to file the 2018-2019 FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. First, before filing, you'll need to gather your asset information because they do ask questions about your assets that you'll have to fill in. So that's your checking and savings account information, the balances as of the day we apply of your any stocks, bonds, mutual funds that are not in a retirement account. So they're not looking for what you have in retirement accounts, but your current assets. For the FAFSA, they do not look at the value of the home you live in. However, if you have a vacation home or any investment real estate, they are looking for that. Also, get your tax return, and I'll show you as you go through, you are able to just go up and link your tax return where it'll pull the data off for you. We're going to walk through this one as if we weren't linking our tax return. Next, you want to create an FSA ID. And what's that? That becomes your online signature for federal financial aid forms. And so you'll want to go to fsaid.ed.gov, and you'll need a signature for both the student and the parent. And so if you're a parent, if you have more than one child, your signature is the same for all of the children that you're going to apply for, and all of the children will need to have their own FSA IDs. Again, we're going to go through this. You can file it without your FSA ID. However, then later on, if you want to make changes or release the form to additional schools, you will need to have your FSA ID at that time. So after you have that information, you've applied for your FSA ID. Again, if you're up against a deadline, you can do it after we file the FAFSA. Then we're going to want to go to www.fafsa.ed.gov. And this is the first screen that we're going to see. And so here, we're going to click Start a New FAFSA. Then you have the option to either enter the FSA ID and log in that way, or just to enter the student's information. And notice here on the left side where it says student. So anytime it says you or your, it's referring to the student, not to the parent. And so when it says your parents, it means the student's parents, not the student's grandparents. A lot of times, I know it's the parents who fill this out, so that can be confusing. But whose perspective it's coming from, just look to the left where it says student. And it'll identify what section, whose data you're entering in there. But remember, it always is from the perspective of the student. So if you're going to enter the student's information, you have to put in the student's first name, the student's last name, student's social security number, and then the student's date of birth. The big scary disclaimer on the penalty they give you. This is only the student and the family who are supposed to be filling this information out and not sharing it. You accept that disclaimer. And then we get to the next screen where it says Get Started. And so you want to fill out, if you're going to school for next fall, that'll be 2018. So you want to fill out and click to start the 2018-2019 FAFSA. Now the next screen, and I don't know why they call it this, but they say create a save key. Save key really is just a password, and it's a temporary password in case you get kicked out of this, or in case you realize, oh, I don't have all the information I need and I need to go back. This just allows you to resume where you left off. After you submit the FAFSA, you no longer need to remember this password. So just put in some form of a temporary password that you'll remember if you get kicked out and have to log back in, or if you have to log back in after a day or two when you gather all of the rest of the information that you need. So then the next, it's just going to list the sections and give you some questions that you can get and some resources. We can just click next and go through that. So now we're going to start with the student's demographic information, and this is fairly basic. The student's last name, and again, where it says your last name, it means the student, your first name, middle initial, social security number, date of birth, are you a male or female, permanent mailing address, city, state, zip, have you lived here for 5 years? We had selected Connecticut, telephone number, email address. A lot of times I'll put in even though there is a place later on where you can put in the parent's email address, I usually recommend that families, if the parents are filling this out and they're going to be handling and responsible for most of the financial aid information, that they put in their email address just so they'll get all the notifications. What is your marital? So this is referring to the student. What is the student's marital status as of today? Single, and then if you have, well, you would enter what the status is. Do you have a driver's license information that you want to provide? You don't have to provide it, but if you haven't and you say yes, then they'll ask for the state and then your driver's license number. Then we would click next. Now they're trying to determine if you're eligible. So are you a U.S. citizen? Yes, or you could be an eligible non-citizen. Are you registered with the Selective Service System? So males over 18 have to be registered for federal financial to be eligible for the federal financial aid. If you click no, then it'll say, do you want us to register you? And then when the student becomes eligible, they will register the student. What is your high school What will your high school completion status be when you begin college? And so if they're going the traditional route through high school, then it could be high school diploma, or if they have had an interruption and they're getting a GED instead, you can select GED. In this case, we just selected high school diploma, and then if you're going for your first time, never attended college first year. And then what degree will you be working on? First bachelor's degree. I always say yes to this next, or recommend students say yes. Are you interested in being considered for work study? Doesn't mean that you have to work. You can always turn it down later, but you might as well be considered for it to have that option. Will you have your first bachelor's degree before you begin the 2018-19? So for most people, that's a no if you're filing. Maybe if you're filing for financial aid for a graduate school, then it would be yes. But if you're going into an undergraduate, for most people, we would say no to having the first bachelor's degree. Are you a foster youth, or were you at any time in the foster care system? So you would have to select your answer for that, as well as the highest level of school completed by parent 1 and parent 2. So they would give you a few options. Could be high school, could be college or beyond, other, if it's a trade school, etc. So then we fill that out, and then we're going to click next. So now they're looking for the name of the school you attend. So you type in the name of your high school, what city it is, what city it's in, what state. And after you do that, it'll come up with a list of the high schools. And then you just select the high school. I'm a Jonathan Law alumni Jonathan Law's in Milford, Connecticut. So you could select law. And then once again, you can select confirm. And then you go on next. So now it has your high school entered in. And after we've confirmed the high school, then you go through and you can enter in up to 10 colleges at a time. If you need to, if you're applying to more than 10 colleges, what you would do is you would submit it to the initial 10, wait till it's been processed, and then go back and submit a correction and delete the initial 10 and then release it to the additional schools. So now you could just choose the state, type in the school name or the city, and then you're going to select the school. So here, we just put in a few. And then you have to put in your housing plans. So if you're going to live at home, the options with parents. If you're going to live on campus, it is on campus. And then if you're going to live not with your parents, so off campus in an apartment or something, then you can select off campus. Now the next we're going to is the dependency determination. And they ask these questions to determine whether the student is dependent so depending on the parents, or an independent student. Unless you can answer yes to one of these questions, then the student will be considered a dependent student, and you'll be required to enter in the parental information. And so, were you born before January 1st, 1995? Are you married? Are you working on an advanced degree beyond a bachelor's degree? Do you have children who receive more than half of their support from you? Do you have dependents who live with you and receive more than half their support from you? Are you currently serving in the U.S. Armed Forces for purposes other than training? Are you a veteran of the Armed Forces? At any time since you turned 13, were both of your parents deceased? Were you in foster care, or were you a dependent or ward of the court? As determined by a court in your state of legal residence, are you or were you an emancipated minor? Does someone other than your parent or step-parent have legal guardianship of you as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? On or after July 1, 2017, were you homeless, or were you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? So if you can answer yes to any one of those questions, then they consider you, they do what they call a dependency override, and you're an independent student. They do not ask for any parental information, but if you say no to all of those questions, then they determine you to be a dependent student. And it's interesting here, they say this means you must provide parental information. Then right down here they ask you, do you want to provide? But if you were to say, if you were unable to provide it, then you would have to do an extenuating circumstance appeal with the school, and then they can use their professional judgment and do a case by case, but you wouldn't qualify for the automatic dependency override. So again, for the vast majority of students who are going through this, and for probably the people who are watching this video, we're looking at dependent students. So then we click next. Notice now the color has changed and it says parent, but still it's from the student's point of view. What is the marital status of your parents? So if you're a parent filling this out, this isn't asking for your parents, it's asking for you. And then so you can select, enter in the parent's email address. So let's say you may want to put another one of the parents' email addresses, or you can put the same address in for the student and the parent if you wanted to. Have your parents lived in Connecticut for at least 5 years? So number of family members. And so this is used, they give you a protection for your income based on the size of the family. So these are people who live with you more than half the time, and you provide more than half the support. And so that isn't always, you're not always necessarily receiving a tax deduction for them, because sometimes, in the case of divorced or separated parents, one parent, both children will live with one parent, but the parents may split the tax deductions or whatever. So it's based on residence, where they live more than 50% of the time. And then the next question is, how many will be college students? So at least one, right? The student we're filling this out for, even if they're not a student now, it's as of next fall they're asking. So you would enter in those numbers, and then they do ask for the marital status of the parents. So if you said married, they'd ask the month and year of marriage. If you're either married or remarried, you would put that, or divorced or separated, they asked month and year when they became divorced or separated. In this case, when we said divorced or separated, they want to know whose information, which parent's information will be provided, so you can select that. And then you enter in the social security number, last name, first initial, and date of birth for the parent. If you were living with both parents, you would do that information for both parents. And then you see some of this is the same information they've already asked us for. Number of family members, number in college. And so now they're asking here about the parents' tax information. And so we are using the 2016 tax return. And so it's a completed tax return, which makes this much easier than it used to be when you had to estimate. but you can also link it right to your tax return. So now they'll ask you if you've completed your tax return, the status of your tax return, the filing status. So if it could be married filing joint, married filing independently, head of household, whatever the filing status is as it says on the tax return. And notice over on the side here, these helps and hints, you can highlight any of the questions and it'll give you more information there that you can look at. And now the next question it asks, did you file a Puerto Rican or foreign tax return for 2016? It may also ask, did you file within the last 5 weeks? And then if you say no to those, you can choose to link your tax return directly to your FAFSA. You would need the FSA ID in order to do that. And then you click on link to the IRS. And then it would pull all of the information for you automatically from the tax return and populate it in the areas where the information goes. In this case, we're going to say no thank you and just type in the information. So they need to know what type of a tax return. This could be important if the family is making less than $50,000 a year and you're eligible to file a 1040A or EZ. That means you do not itemize your deductions. Then you're eligible for simplified needs analysis. So you would want to find out if you're eligible to file a 1040A or 1040 EZ, because if you select you may file a 1040, but if you're eligible to file a 1040A, that's important because then again you can get that simplified needs analysis. Here they're asking for in this case we said it was the mother, so the mother's adjusted gross income from 2016, and you're just looking right on your tax return. That's line 37. Now this next one is a little deceptive. How much did your mother earn from working in 2016? And then they say 1040, the lines. Actually, where you should pull this from is from the W-2, and it should be from box 5 of your W-2. And the reason is that this is used to determine your Social Security allowance, how much Social Security tax you paid, and that comes off of box 5, which is your Medicare wages and tips. So in the formula, if you were to ever build a spreadsheet to do an estimate of the EFC, which I do every year, you would see that this income earned from work question is not used for determining your expected family contribution. Instead, it's determining an allowance against your income, one of the few allowances they give you. So it somewhat counterintuitive, but you actually want that to be the higher number there because then they give you more of an allowance and it's actually more accurate. You want to take it from box 5, Medicare wages and tips, because that's what they're trying to determine here, a Medicare allowance. There were, okay, if box 1 was higher than box 5, you may want to just put in the box 1 here. But this really should be from box 5. I've gone to conferences, and again, every year I put together a spreadsheet and calculate it according to the formulas. And to be the most accurate, that's where it should come from. Ask if you're a dislocated worker. So that means if you've laid off or been laid off recently. And again, if you have a question, highlight it and then look in the help and hints on the right side. So we've entered in that information, the adjusted gross income, and then the income from work. Now we go to the next page. And so this is the income tax. And again, this comes right off of your tax return. And so if you had linked it, it would be pre-populated for you. You wouldn't have to enter it in here. Otherwise, you just have to look on your 1040. And I know a lot of times people, I'll ask them, how much did you pay in taxes? They say, well, I don't pay anything. I get money back. And no, I mean, you are paying. It's just you paid in more than you needed to. And that's why they give you money back. And so the money, the income taxes paid comes off of your 1040, and just look on your 1040 to pull that. The number of exemptions, again, this comes off of your tax return. So it doesn't matter who got the exemption for the student in the case of divorced or separated parents. What matters is where the student lives more than 50% of the time. So these next questions are untaxable income questions. So These top ones are allowances that will actually help you in reducing your expected family contribution, right? And so let's say your tax was lowered because you received the American Opportunity Tax Credit or Lifetime Learning Tax Credit. Those are tax credits for higher education, and taxes paid are one of the other allowable allowances against income, and so they wouldn't want to penalize you for that. So that will help further reduce the income they think that you have to pay for college. If you're paying child support, again, the child support's not taxable. You don't get a tax deduction if you pay it. You don't pay taxes on it if you get it. So if you're paying child support, then they give that to you as an allowance. And then there are some other taxable earnings from work study. Again, if you're earning this money, it's supposed to be paying for your education, and they're not going to penalize you on that as well. The next are add backs, things that they're adding into your income. So while they don't look at the value of your retirement plans, the contribution you made, so typically box 12 on your W-2, the contribution you made in that year is added back to your income as if you had that. So here, whatever contribution you made in 2016 comes right off of your W-2, that would be added back. Or if it was an IRA, that would come off of your tax return. So you can highlight those boxes, and then it'll tell you in that on the helps and hints where you'll find that information on either your tax return or your W-2. Child support received, so that gets added into your income as well. These are, again, untaxed income. These are things that increase your expected family contribution. And actually, let's go back because we can't see it here in this screenshot. Ooh. But on the bottom of this, it will that's where it asks for the parent asset information, right down below that untaxed income. And so they will ask you for it, if you have above a certain amount of money in assets. If you say no, then you don't, they shield a certain percentage of your assets. So if you're not above that limit, they don't ask the information since it won't add to your expected family contribution. But if you are above that limit, they ask in 3 different ways. There is cash savings and checking. So they want you to enter the value, and these are a snapshot of your wealth as of the day you're applying for financial aid. It's not a 1-year or a 2-year look back on assets like they go back on income. It's as of the day you apply. And these are assets that are not in retirement accounts. So they'll ask for cash savings and checking, and then they'll ask for investments. And then they'll ask for a business, cash value of a business if you own any businesses. If the business has less than 100 employees and it's the primary source of your income, then they don't look at that value. And you can look in the helps and hints there. And it's something, if you have questions on, you can email me about that, and we can try to determine whether or not you need to include that. But it is fairly straightforward. So those are the 3 areas of assets that they look at. They do not look at the value of your retirement plans, although on the CSS profile they do. So you would enter that, and then we click next. And now we're on to the student. So not going to file. They still would ask how much you made from work. And you would need to make probably around $5,000 or more for a student before it adds to your expected family contribution. And expected family contribution is that amount of money that the schools are going to expect you to pay each year that the student is going to college. So you do get the privilege of filling out this form every year that you're asking for financial aid. So it's not just a one and done form. You have to renew your financial aid every year. So then the next, they'll ask for this untaxed information for the students. And here you can see the asset questions. And these are the student assets. So total current balance of cash savings and checking, net worth of investments, including any real estate not your primary residence, net worth of current business or investment farms, don't include family farm or family business with 100 or fewer full-time or full-time equivalent employees. Okay, so you don't have to put that in. And that's it. You've completed the form. What you would want to do now is click this View or Print Your FAFSA Information. That'll get you a summary of all the information you've submitted. You may want to print that out and just double check everything. And also perhaps save a copy of it as a PDF so that you can get back and review that information. If you had someone help prepare it, a paid preparer, then you would have to click yes, and they would need to sign it as well. There are a few options for signing. If you have the FSA ID, you can just enter it right here for both the student, and then if we scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'd enter the information in for the parent as well, and then click submit, and then you'll want to print the confirmation page as well after you've finished the form and actually submitted it. So make sure you go all the way to the end. Or you can choose to print a signature page and then mail in the signatures. It's processed slightly more slowly if you mail the signatures versus doing it automatically and submitting the FSA ID and password. But you've now completed the form. If you have questions, you can email info@firstchoicecollege.com, and good luck. And again, if you can leave comments, please share the video and help us out. Have a great day. And that's filing your 2018-2019 FAFSA.